Hey everybody, welcome back to Devs on a Couch. It's a special Devs on a Couch because we're not actually on a couch. Today, CK and I are going to be discussing the new M1 Max.
We both bought M1 Max. You bought yours at, when was it?
Right when they came out.
When they came out. I got mine beginning of 2021 because we were both upgrading from some i3
Yes.
13-inch or i5 13-inch laptops. And
Yeah, I had the 2019 MacBook Pro 13-inch.
Yeah, and they're great. They're amazing machines. You know, they're great for just general productivity and stuff. But when you start a few node workers and maybe do some like simulation for mobile apps or things,
Or Zoom calls. No one does those anymore.
So I got a Mac Mini 16, and you got what's that one?
I got this is the MacBook Air. It's the base model too. I did upgrade the hard drive, but I didn't upgrade the RAM, so it's just the 8 gig.
And that was an interesting consideration. It was like we were both talking about it when I bought my machine, because it's impossible to upgrade any of the internal components on these, and that was a big factor.
Yeah.
We'll talk about some of our findings, and this is sort of like not a initial review. It's more of a devs having used this for months kind of review, and just some of our takeaways about using these exciting new machines.
So why did we do this to ourselves, CK?
We're masochists.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it in the intro. So you do primarily, I don't know. I thought you primarily were like web, but I think we both kind of play in all the spaces.
Yeah.
As a primarily mobile developer, like I'm running simulators. I usually have multiple browser windows open. Of course, we have all of our work stuff, calendar,
Zoom,
Slack.
Zoom. Lots of Zoom. Yeah, and I do a lot of video work and such too. So it was a need to push into something that had like more RAM on my side, because that's something I'm doing on the side. And so it's having more of that available was really helpful. But even just for multitasking, I'm forever keeping too many browser tabs open or trying to run Zoom while doing other builds and stuff, which some of it has just become a way of life because, you know, like we've said, we keep saying it over and over, but we use Zoom a lot now, and it's a fairly processor intensive and memory intensive application. Even if you're not running all the crazy backgrounds and everything, it's just become something you have to have in tandem with your other apps that you're running. And so what I really wanted was like 80% of the things that I do on a regular basis to be no-brainer, like the system can take it. And then the really taxing stuff I do, you know, is always going to be a consideration, and how you do that with something else. But it was just like, how can I kind of reestablish a baseline for productivity in my daily work, and then go from there as far as, the really heavy workload stuff.
Also, I was really intrigued by the battery life. So I also considered the Mini as well. But I also know me as a person, I'm never going to be happy with just being tethered to a desk all the time. And it's really frequent that I will actually go out and still, even during a pandemic, go to a coffee shop. And I don't know, I like to have people around me. I like to see people. My first trip to work outside of the house was pretty eye-opening. Like I worked a legitimate full day without plugging in, and I still had a ton of battery left, which was amazing to me.
Now, the model that you got doesn't have any fans, right?
No. Yeah.
See, that's wild to me. So mine the Mac Mini still has a small fan inside that every now and then kicks on, and it's so silent I have to literally put my hand back there to even tell. But it's really crazy how efficient these machines run from a heat perspective, because they just don't, like if you're putting some of the laptops on your lap, they would you cook eggs on it, and it just doesn't do that, and they just don't get as warm, and they don't need that kind of thermal control.
I mean, mine's not on right now because I've got it closed, but I don't know that I've ever noticed it getting warm.
It's so crazy.
Yeah,
It's just one of the amazing benefits of the new architecture that really blew me away. And that was one of the reasons I was like, okay, I just need to understand this more. Like,
I'm kind of cold-natured though, so I didn't hate like the warmer laptops.
space heater.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, this is nice. In the wintertime, it keeps me warm.
yeah, so now you have to find a different way to do that. But
I know. Now I have to like wear a jacket or something. Were there any software considerations?
yeah, because I think a lot of the work that we do is very consistent, and the toolkits that we use are industry standard. It's not something where we're having to like re-engineer our stack all the time, which is nice because we're using things that are widely used. But the big consideration was, if I set this up over the weekend, can I use it on Monday when I come to do work? Because if there's a certain node package that we all use to do our React Native work, and it's not ported over, or it can't be run under Rosetta 2 or whatever, that's a big problem, and that means we can't get our work done. So having the ambiguity be in more of the day-to-day context and less in our tooling was a big factor for me taking the plunge and deciding to buy one.
Yeah, same. I really, since I'm primarily on React Native, and I still dabble in Flutter, I was really looking at, are those stacks fully supported? Is there evidence of people actually using this successfully right now? I did a few, tests as soon as I got it. I mean, I still had my work laptop,
right,
so worst case scenario, I know that the industry is heading that direction,
yep.
but I really wanted to use all the power and performance on Monday, like you said.
That's true. And I mean, you hit some initial issues with some Docker, and I mean, there was some concern that's like, oh, is this gonna work?
Yeah. So almost immediately after getting this, we ended the client work that I was on. That project wrapped up, and we started a new one, and they were using Docker, and this was back in December, and Docker was not supported on the M1 yet because of some dependencies within Docker. And so they released a preliminary beta, and I tried it, and it wasn't working.
Which is terrifying.
Yeah, it was terrifying. So we worked around it a little bit. It was not ideal. However, like in the last 2 weeks, I did install the latest Docker again. It's still considered a preview, but it is working, and I have everything working. So that was kind of like the last piece of, I guess, software dependency that I needed to be able to do my job without any question.
It was interesting too, because I was running the AWS CDK, which is their CLI tools and everything, and it was not working at all. Even under Rosetta, just the version that had come out, there were specific aspects of it that just didn't port over properly, and that was similarly terrifying because I was, doing this greenfield setup for a net new client, and I was like, oh my goodness, I have to use these tools.
Yeah.
And I had my work machine ready to go and to spin it up, but we need to talk about the speed and everything too because of the drastic differences. But I was driven to figure it out because of the performance improvements and because of the promise of doing work in the specific way. And it was only through GitHub issues, going through old school forum style, going back and forth with people, being like, okay, what version did you use? Are you using iTerm under Rosetta 2? Are you what version of Node are you using? Are you using NVM? And just all these different things. I was trying to do some Ruby Rails stuff, and that was also bombing out because of the issues with RVM and just but that's what we signed up for, right? This is what it.
I think it's the price of being an early adopter. Yeah.
Right.
So speaking of performance, what types of performance improvements have you seen?
Well, one of the things that made me purchase the machine was sitting on Slack with you and pulling down the same repo and running npm install, and then he would show me his execution timer, and I would clock mine. I'm like, yeah, mine's still going, and 2.5 times faster is what we found to be the case on most tasks. So even just a simple npm init, install these packages and go, it's literally 2.5 times faster. on the M1 than on the i5 13-inch MacBooks that we were using. That blew me away. I was like, no, this is you're kidding me. And so we kept doing other tests, and we would do like, I think we did an encoding test or something, and I was like, okay, this is astounding.
Yeah, and I mean, so those are like, I don't know that developers or anybody really is sitting around just running benchmarks or you know, timing a task, yeah, except you. But I think what immediately got my attention was how everything is just so snappy, and like opening apps. I don't know. It's like the computer is almost. I mean, it's still. It could be faster. I'm excited for the next version, but it just responds immediately to what you want it to do, and that's really, really nice.
Yeah, I think a big part of speed, like obviously there's going to be an M2, and one day there'll be an M80, and like, you know, whatever. Like all of these things are just always going to get faster. It's the perceived difference to what you have available at the moment that really changes the way you interact with these tools. And so for me, yes, I get nerdy about all the timings and everything, but it really is just about, hey, I have 8 cores in my machine. I pull up Zoom and my processor isn't at 90%. Like, that's cool. Like that's neat, because now I have the confidence with also the advanced memory swapping it does, and caching it to disk. It's gotten way better at that with this architecture. Like the way it offloads tasks and then reprioritizes what you're needing to do at that moment it just feels better. And that's one thing with Apple it's always like the feel good factor of like the confidence you have in using the tool.
Does it make me happy?
Yeah.
When I'm using it.
Yeah, like do I have confidence in my machine? You know, is that something that I can rely on to get something done? Because then it's a lot, I don't know, for me that changes the way I approach work. If I know that, not that you have to have, you know, a fast machine, and these are certainly not the highest end machines you could be running, but knowing that you have access to it if you need it just gives you the confidence to jump in and be like, no, I'm gonna start this thing or do this other process and kick this off, and it's not gonna be a big deal.
I think that's huge. I mean, you think about projects that you've worked on that were a drag to work on, and it's usually if, you know, the stack is really slow, if you need to run a test and you have to wait, 10 minutes. So, I mean, it's great if you enjoy coffee or you're a smoker, because then you can go away and then go do those things and then come back. Yep. But if you're trying to get stuff done, every time you save and the app refreshes or something like that, and that takes a while, that's like real meaningful time. And if that's super slow, it's like, man, this is killing the momentum of my day.
It was surprising when I pulled up a kind of beefy repo and ran ESLint on it, and it sat there for a second. I was like, oh, what's wrong, buddy? Like, what's the matter? Like, come on. But because, some of that stuff just is legitimately hard math for the computer to do. But the magic of like the Rosetta 2 experience and bringing apps forward that aren't optimized, then when you see the optimized version, you see it running that much faster. And a lot of the big names in our space did a really good job of getting their versions of software updated so that we could have M1 compliant, apps running right away, like native apps. And even the file system, like just moving large files around in the file system just feels faster somehow.
Yeah.
And I have then gone back to other machines and worked with them, but like, oh yeah, it is a little.
I was actually thinking about that before we shot today, because I feel I've been on the M1 for long enough that I've forgotten the pain of being on my previous machine, and so I kind of feel like I should have gone back and spent a little bit of time on that before I filmed today, because I've since forgotten what it's like to be slow all the time.
It's funny too, because it's slow in like the context of specific types of work, right? So when you're just doing general productivity, you're just doing like your standard stack of things. If you're not running a bunch of node processes in the background or something, those machines are still fantastic.
It didn't improve my typing speed, unfortunately.
That's the M5.
Yeah, the M5.
That's the promise of the next upgrade. Yeah,
going to be so productive. kind of summarizing everything, what are your takeaways with owning the M1?
Honestly, the realizing what a shift it would be, even just for general tasks, like working with the file system, running in node processes, working with some, multiple apps at the same time. It made me want to try and outrun it, because I was like, oh, this thing is fast. Like, I want to test this out a little bit, and this is why I don't have a sports car. And but it is like this. It's a confidence boost for me. Wanting to push it and wanting to say, okay, not to max out the RAM or whatever, because I can have a bad habit of doing that, but like wanting to just push it and say, what could I do differently throughout my day if I had the confidence of this tool being there, ready to go? Like, if it's just sitting and waiting, and I could give it another task to do, is there more that I could be working on in the background? But that's about me. What about you?
Yeah, I was going to say my initial experience was the opposite. I didn't have a lot of confidence. So again, getting back to a lot of the reviewers, it seemed like everybody was reviewing the machines based on multimedia performance. And honestly, that's one of the hard things of just watching a lot of like tech bloggers and tech vloggers on YouTube, is that they really focus on their space, which makes sense. I mean, that's where they have the most experience. But I'm not always editing video. Our tools are quite a bit different. Right. The space we play in is a lot different. And so I found myself installing a lot of like early software, a lot of betas. And when we were talking about it, my initial reaction was, it's really good at running beta software really fast. But because of that, I had run into errors and issues that I had never noticed on my previous computer. Docker wasn't working for a while. Now it is. So initial reaction, I wasn't lukewarm. I was really excited about it still, just because of all the benefits it brought. But there were some things that I was, it's like going really fast knowing that your brakes are going to fail. It's like, I don't know if I'm going to make it to my destination, but...
Yeah, and just not having the confidence that, like, these are all new errors, right? Yeah. It's saying, hey, we can't do this because you're not on this architecture anymore. And you're like, oh. It's just like being in deep space, and there is a little bit of that, which I'm really grateful that the GitHub issues are full of people going through similar things, and there's a lot of people writing articles about it and shooting videos on it. But yeah, it's a little weird. Like, you're like, oh, I haven't seen this error before.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely early adopter land. But I will say, like, just in the last 2 to 3 months, has it been that long? At least 2 months, things have rapidly been moving to stability. Yeah. So I don't know that, I would, for any developer that's considering it right now, I would say obviously check your stack out, like what tools are you going to be using, make sure that they're supported, or at least run under Rosetta emulation without any issues.
Right.
Apple would say, oh yeah, it's just going to run because if it can't run optimized, and it's going to run under Rosetta. But because of the mix of tools, that's not always the case. Like, you'll run into legitimate issues getting things to talk to each other.
Yeah, I think any kind of like wilderness exploration, which is kind of what this feels like, is you're taking on certain risks. You need to have backup strategies, whether like we had our other machines sitting right there ready to go with all the tools installed that we would need. But there is sort of a rush to it too when you're exploring something new, and that's something that I think at Crema is like all of our developers and really everybody embodies, is just this desire to push into new areas. And so for us in this case it was hardware, but it could be a new tool or a new process or whatever, and just having the pain tolerance to do that is really valuable, because then you legitimately can find these experiences that are just wildly different than what you're used to. Maybe even unexpectedly. Like, for me, the file system was just one that surprised me. I just keep mentioning it because it's like copying a huge file. It just, boom, it was done.
So fast.
It's crazy. It's fun what you can find when you're willing to take on that little bit of ambiguity and risk. And that really did. That kind of summed it up for me. Is like it's a new update to Big Sur dropped the other day, and I got a weird graphic bug, and my machine restarted, and I thought, oh no, is this the new normal? And it was ironed out in the next update. So we'll just kind of keep playing with it and see how it goes.
I think if you are a developer right now and you're looking to switch to the M1, I would have no problem recommending it for React or React Native developers. I can't really speak about what about like Ruby developers?
From what I've seen, the basic tools I've run, they've been able to update everything with like the Ruby version managers, things like that. Then the really exciting stuff is if you get into using audio video tools, you're running Resolve, or even there was a big thing with the Adobe apps when it first dropped, because they weren't optimized. Everybody was up in arms with Adobe, and that's all being ironed out. So it's, pretty soon, it's like whenever they start talking about the next generation of machines, you can probably be confident that the tools on the first generation have been mostly ironed out. You'll find some bugs, an update will come along and your screen will go pink and green like mine did, and that was fun. But those are the little things that are just part of this early adopter process. And for day-to-day stuff, though, it's totally recommend.
Yeah, and we'd love to hear your comments. So if you guys are watching and you're using a different development stack than we are, and you're on the M1, leave a comment below and let us know what you're using, and if you've run into any issues. We'd love to get a discussion going and hopefully help other developers that are looking to maybe upgrade their machine.
Very good.
Thanks for watching. Oh, jinx.